Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Hot Off the Press, the show about new releases and the authors that bring them to you, and questionable life choices. I'm your host, Jim Nettles, and so we're going to go around and see who is bringing up those things to stack up those to-be-read piles. So, Alyssa, you're up first.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Askani. I am the River of Ethereal Darkness, which is really strange because I'm going to talk about with a bunch of stories and poetry that takes place in a world with an eternal sun.
Layla?
Hi, I'm Layla Dorine. I write LGBTQ fiction and romance. And today I am here to talk to you one last time about More Than Scars, which actually just finished being written today. And that is a rock star romance.
Jenny?
Hi, I'm Gini Koch. I write the Alien Catherine Kitty Cat series, formerly for Daw Books, and now for Ginger Glue Publishing. I can speak. I also write under a variety of other pen names and in all lengths and genres. And I am here to talk about the latest re-releases in the Alien series as we barrel towards all the new stuff.
Dennis?
Hi, I'm Dennis M. Myers. I write science fiction in the far future. My first series, Rise of the Automated Empire, is out now, available on Amazon. And I'm here to talk today about my brand new book, Secret of the Ombax, which will be out hopefully this month, the month of October 2025.
So let's start with this notion of, kind of the world building. What world are we stepping into? What's the big setup? We'll come and we'll talk deeper about characters in a few minutes. But what's the inspiration and what's the big setup? So Alyssa, I'm going to start with you on that. What's the overall big setup in your land of the never setting sun?
Well, I, like many things, I played too many video games, or I was in the room when video games were being played, and my brain starts smashing things together. So I was like, hey, what if we took the cool-looking, weird, almost Moebius-style dragons out of Panzer Dragoon Orta, have those, by the way, and put it in a world that's a lot like the Tokyo that you find in Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne. And the weird thing about that map is instead of there being a nice spherical world with the sun going around it, you get the opposite. Here is the world, the people are here, and here's the sun. So I put those things together and had fun.
So kind of what's the world we're stepping into on this one? Since, what's it like for the people we're walking into on this, for this set of stories? And I think there's some poetry in here and a lot of different culture.
A lot. It's a lot of brutality because it's awfully hot. I mean, it's just an intense heat either way. If you're lucky, you get a big storm roll through and then you're drenched all the time, and that will block the sun. You don't get to use the word day because, well, there's no end of what you have. So all time is measured by is wind. And that's pervasive throughout all of the minor cultures and regions throughout the world. It's mostly separated, except there is a chaotic order that feels like they worship the sun, and they feel like, well, we have to create death in order to appease the sun and end the torment. So we're going to kill everybody. Which would be fine if they were just a weird death cult in the corner, but early on in their ambition, they conquered a nation that had dragons. So now they have dragons and they can go wherever they want. So everybody's kind of like, oh, those Ashurians are everywhere. I would love their chaos to go away. And we have floating cities that are evasive. We have hidden cultures of people who wield fire as just second nature of their lives. We have knights that don't die. I'm big into that for some silly reason. I have other stories planned where there's settlers on a coast that are just trying to, reap some wheat and instead they have to deal with economics and politics. So there's a bunch of, the reason why it's short fiction is so there are little dots of things going on in one world, but there's also the threads that connect things, and there are characters that jump between stories and stuff as well, but we'll talk about them in a minute.
So, Layla, now that we've finally finished the big Rocktoberfest, what's the world we're diving into this go round?
So we are back in Black Rock City, and our band, Imminent Danger. This band is kind of something completely different, because my co-writer and I, this is our 5th Rocktoberfest. So we've always done, established bands. Maybe they need to replace somebody. Maybe they've, fallen on hard times and this is their big break. We decided to do something completely different because we wanted to set up not just this year's Rocktoberfest, but the next 3 years to come. We are going to do a romance with each member of the band. She's controlling 2 members. I'm controlling 2 members. We kind of cross-write for one of them, really. And that was not expected. We didn't plan what ended up happening, which was the best absolute thing. We have written, this is our 5th book together, our 4th book, something like that. We've been writing a lot together. And as we got into it, we realized, okay, the story that we had in mind, when they went to pick a singer, it was not working. Like, the auditions weren't working. And we were like, all right, we've got this guy who auditioned his guitar that was really just there to support his friend. And the next thing you know, we're like, wait a minute. We're sitting across the room from each other going, he's got a good voice, though. What if we make him the singer and then him and his best friend get to go on the road together, and then we only have to find 2 more band members? So the beginning of this book is a lot of auditions, and they are hilarious because we have old characters from other books who are there, and they're helping with the auditions, and they're giving advice, and they're giving snark, and it just creates a bigger band family. So that once these guys start traveling and actually performing together after they've had some time to practice before they get ready for Oktoberfest, they are hitting places that are kind of important to them. It's definitely one of those things where there's a lot of history that they have with other people, and some of those other people come back in the book. But then when you get to Rocktoberfest has a lot of history for her and I. So the shred off that we do every year, we nailed that and brought back guys from 3 different bands. We had people from other books that they ran into in the crowd. Excuse me. They get covered in bubbles at one point because Johnny and Jagger from Damaged Saints and Echoes of a Muted Song, they're being their usual Chaos Bunny selves, and they've got bubble cannons, and they meet the new band that way. So you get all these old faces. Because after 5 years and 5 different bands, which is like 25 characters plus a piece for us, we had to bring some of the fan favorites back. And we had to do it in a way where our readers were going to be like, oh crap, they ran into, Jagger, they ran into Stoley, they ran into Diamond. And it's like, yes, we are running into everybody, because for the next few years, these guys are going to be on tour, and we are going to have so much fun with that.
Jenny? So since we're stepping into the world of Alien Kitty Cat, what kind of worlds are we stepping into? Because I think we talked last time on the last couple of them. This is where, well, we're getting into a few bloodbaths.
That was the last 2. In Alien Collective, we're in a different kind of bloodbath. We're in the political bloodbath. Basically, the conceit in the world, aliens are here. My heroine discovers the Roswell rumors are true, but with a twist, the aliens are here to help us, and as a side benefit, they're all gorgeous. And Katie gets involved to save the day, and does so with the knowledge of pop culture, comics, hairspray, and rock and roll. And none of that has changed. I do what I call internal and external books. So Book one is where you discover that there's a threat and the monsters are from space, basically. That's book one. Book two is all politicians behaving badly. And I kind of tend to alternate. So at this point, you don't know whether I'm doing an internal book where everything really is focused on Earth or an external book where it's focused outwards. And Alien Collective is, pardon me, I think no, it stopped. Okay. It'll come back later, I'm sure, but sneezes always do. So Alien Collective, in Alien in the House, Kitty's now husband, Jeff Martini, basically the top alien on the planet, has been shoved into a political role. He is in the House of Representatives. Unwillingly, but he's going to do his best because that's Jeff. He's always going to do the best job he can, even if he doesn't want to do it. In Alien Research, there was an attack that was bio in nature, and a lot of the aliens have been negatively affected. That was the Red Wedding, basically, and so forth. We find out a lot of new things. We find out that there are a lot of hybrids that no one knew about, and that the person who is actually the big bad in book one, he could never keep it in his pants. And we knew that, but we didn't know how many children this man had fathered, and he is a genetic sport. And what that means in genetics is that there is anything can happen with you. Most genetics is actually this is going to happen, that's going to happen. But with a sport, anything can happen. And so it turns out some of these people don't normally, hybrids they're internally alien on the inside and they are externally human. But a lot of these hybrids, they don't have two hearts like the aliens. They don't have some of them don't have hyperspeed or super strength. They have powers, but they don't know, and most of them are very set apart and feel very alone. And so the bad guys are going on a recruiting mission during the time that, or they already have been, and during the time that there's a big political thing coming in. So we have that. When we get to characters, I'll talk about the special characters that are coming in book 9, because they're some of my and the fans' favorites. In Universal Alien, we've already discovered in book 3 that there's a universe wheel, and in book 4, it's completely confirmed. But normally when Kitty or Reader, who are the only two that we really know have actually seen the wheel, they forget about it afterwards. Not anymore, because Kitty is flung into another universe, and her counterpart is flung into this universe. So it's basically what you find out is that in this book is that Kitty is not in our universe, but the Kitty that's thrown in and the universe our Kitty goes to sounds a lot like our universe. So we get the fun of that and seeing how the other half lives. That Kitty has married Charles Reynolds. They've been happily married for years. And our Kitty is basically Wonder Woman in that universe. And so it's a lot of fun to do the cross. I would also like to mention it was the hardest book to write. It's the one I'm deemed most proud of. So because I had to do 2 kitties and they had to sound the same, but different. Let me tell you, that took a lot. So that's where we're at.
Dennis?
Well, ever since I started writing, I knew where I was going. I had this idea of the rise of the Automated Empire and then other stories in the Automated Empire and where it would go. So much so that in my first book, Final Assembly, at the tail end, there's a disconnected chapter called Meanwhile, which breaks away from the human-centered action around Earth, and it's 2 alien boys talking to each other. And in the distance, they see an airship. And they're talking about, the history projects and things like that. Just as a stinger, a teaser for what's coming. Also, during the course of the series, evidence is found that there are aliens out there, and they get some clues as to where to go. This next book, Secret of the Ombax, the 5th book in print, the first book of a new series, takes place about 10 years after the first series, and this is that first contact, and it goes horribly wrong. Brutally wrong. And the fun part for me as an author is we get to explore the alien world from the viewpoint of the aliens. Almost half of my viewpoint characters are these aliens who live here. So we get to see what's going on in their minds and how they work.
So let's go ahead and take that little bit of a deeper dive. And Layla, I'll start with you on this one. But let's do that deeper dive about who is it we're really hanging out with here, right? Who do we get to go on the adventure with?
You've got Bowie, who is the lead guitarist. You've got Tibby, who's the bassist. You've got Claude, who is the drummer. And you've got Tony, who was originally there as the best friend and is their singer. For those who have read Echoes of a Muted Song, you'll have met Claude. You'll have seen him show up to audition as a relief drummer for actually one of my kind of big bands. And if you read A Little Campfire Blues, you'll have heard Bowie talked about by another guitarist who played with him. So readers who read my worlds already have backstories on those two characters. They've either heard about them and what befell them, or they've seen them on the page. Now they're getting them all together in one place, chapter after chapter, and seeing their stories start to play out. And Tibby is an interesting one that we wound up with because he was somebody who was not accepted for the audition. He was outside trying to get in a line of people who showed up after the group had decided, we've had way too many people show up because they wanted to meet some of the stars, the mentors that were helping create this band, and they really couldn't play. Like, that was one of the fun of our audition pieces, was that one of my friend's bands, my co-writer's band, Social Sinners, there was a guitarist who shows up and tries to play a Social Sinners song. With the guitarist from Social Sinners there helping with the auditions, it does not go well. He does get dismissed. It's a big running joke. In fact, there's a few running jokes throughout the whole thing about audition music and those things, because we really wanted to also play on Presley, who is the band's manager. And he actually happens to be Bowie, the guitarist's love interest. This is their book. This is their love story playing out. At least the first part of it, because obviously they will be back for 3 more books. But Presley is new. This is his first, assignment as a manager, and they've got him basically playing Build-A-Band. And yes, we slipped a Build-A-Bear joke in on that one when the guy running, Mickey, who was running the bass audition, goes, we would have an easier time finding a bassist at Build-A-Bear than we're having in this line. So they start letting people in from outside because all the ones they've tagged have flopped, and we get Tibby. And I can't wait to dive into Tibby. That one is already going to be so much fun, because that gives us our first chance to write a roadie story. And we've already introduced the roadie. Vance, down on his luck, shows up behind the event one night because he sees them moving all this heavy equipment in, asks if they need help. And Claude's like, yeah, especially with these drums that they're trying to get off the truck. And bing, bang, boom, like, we've got now, one more member for their road crew who's going to help load equipment in and out. So we really just literally built the band organically, one character after the other, one audition after the other, until we had a whole band and took them into auditions. It was really fun to do it that way. It was unexpectedly amusing. The amount of laughter and the amount of vodka that got consumed over the course of this creation were almost legendary. And I'm sure some of our shenanigans will make their way into books 2, 3, and 4 of Imminent Danger's story.
Well, please tell me somebody in there was playing rock and roll accordion. That's all I want to know.
I'm sorry, no rock and roll accordions in there, but there's a heck of a lot of Korn, Slipknot. We were the house was a heavy metal haven. This is a metal band. She and I are huge music fans. We were truly inspired by the bands we love. And one of the audition songs that actually landed Tony the job when Bowie got up there and sang it with him. For those who are fans of, oh my gosh, now it messes up my brain. Korn, thank you. Y'all Want a Single. And that's the audition song that got Tony signed.
Jenny? So
Okay.
who are the favorite characters this time?
Okay. Well, in addition to the regular Kitty and Company crew, this book gives us the introduction of Benjamin Seiler, who is Seiler is the pushiest character I've ever written. Basically, he wasn't even supposed to have a name. He was supposed to do a couple things, give Kitty some information, and die. Okay, she's nicknamed him the helpful servant. He isn't supposed to have a name. And then while things are going on, while I'm writing, he's sharing that he's way more important and I should not let him die. It would be a terrible mistake on my part. And he shoves his way in. Seiler is so popular that the fans love him. It was like insta-love with this guy. He is an assassin. He's also a hybrid. In fact, it turns out he's the first hybrid. And his evil, horrible parents did something weird to him, so he ages slowly. He should be called Wolverine, except Kitty already owns Wolverine with boobs as her superhero nickname, so she nicknames him Nightcrawler. Why? Because he can blend. He can go chameleon, and he can spread that through his touch. So he can disappear and then poof, appear like Nightcrawler does. So that's his nickname. He fights so hard to not be Team Kitty, but he's totally Team Kitty. And he's just fabulous. And in book 5, we meet the top assassins in the world. The Dingo and his cousin. So that's Peter Kasparov as his cousin Victor, who Kitty nicknames the Dingo Dog and Surly Vic. As people go, do you call them that? To their faces? No, she doesn't. She calls them uncles. They become her uncles along the line. And of course, it turns out that Seiler, who's been trained in as assassin, is buds with these guys. They're from the good assassin teams, right? The assassins who do the job. They don't take any pleasure with it. It's a job, and they're very professional. They're very honorable. Versus the psychos, who it's like, yay, I can kill somebody for money, right? They hate them. They hate those people as much as Kitty hates those people. So Seiler came in, and he just took over. He is a major supporting character. And I'll say this now, because I'll be saying it again when book 16 comes. So book 16, Aliens Abroad, takes a gigantic crew unwillingly all around the galaxy. At the end of that book, Kitty and 11 other people are off going to Alpha 4 to appease the Emperor and make sure he feels all special while they share how they're expanding his empire. And you ask, who? Obviously, it should be people who've been in the series for a really... No, Seiler is one of the 12. Why? Because he said he needed to go. And so he's going. Like I said, pushiest character I've ever written, and that's saying a lot. My kitten, who I adopted a few years ago, who isn't a kitten anymore, I named him Seiler because he was the pushiest cat in rescue. And every time he attacks, because I'm his mommy cat, so he thinks I have fur. His claws aren't going to rip me to shreds. He's wrong, but my friends are always like, you named him after an assassin. What did you expect? I'm an idiot. So that's book 9. In book 10, Seiler is in the start but because Kitty is flashed to another multiverse, and because the new Kitty is dealing with everybody else, Sylar is in a little bit, but not very much. Instead, we're really dealing with people and characters the readers already know. Okay, so it starts, our Kitty has created a horrible problem with the Australian Prime Minister and his wife, and that is just going badly. And then she falls and hits her head on concrete, and as Jeff is literally running her to a hospital, she and her other version of her cross. So they do that kind of universe switch, and I mention that because it's significant, because the next universe switch is completely different. So neither Kitty knows what's going on. They both had these horrible shocks and wake up in another universe. And so it's really dealing with, how does things look if Kitty never met an alien? Okay, that's the regular Kitty side. And here's a reminiscence of a new Kitty coming into this, but things are different and there are expectations from her that are different. And her relationship with Jeff is extremely different. Her relationship with other people, she doesn't know at all. And so it was just very fun to do the two versions. Again, with characters everybody knows. Even the bad guys are people that you know from the rest of the series. So, and these are both these are earth grounded. The switch is the only, woo-woo thing you can talk about. The rest of it is very earth grounded. Everything that's happening is happening on their versions of Earth, and no one's coming to save the day. There's no spaceship coming. There's no new alien showing up kind of thing. So it was just very fun to write, and it was really fun to do because, spoiler alert for folks that are old, this is the wife of the vice president now. It's just completely changed. But it's okay because she's hit her head, so they're going to blame concussion for everything all the way down the line. But anyway, it's super fun. And like I said, Sylar became an instant fan favorite. And doing the two kitties was really fun to do. And like I said, it was really hard. It was hard to make it look effortless anyway.
Dennis, who are we hanging out with, both scaly and not so scaly?
Well, we'll start with Scaly. The two brothers that were introduced in Final Assembly are Daxi and Bongeeks, and they are both point of view characters in the new story. They start off as brothers. They've never been separate. They've always been, doing their thing together. And because of the events of the story, one goes one way and the other goes a different way. And their stories, they diverge and they have different adventures, shall we say. And then on the ship, the name of the ship is the Endurance. This is the big colony ship, explorer. And Skip is a character that's introduced in the second book of my series. And he and his family, the ones who survive, are on the ship. And he's the captain. And so we see things from his perspective, how he handles the loss. And during the very beginning of the novel, the Pang Yu, which is another ship, shows up with reinforcements, another viewpoint character, and news about the war. In the very beginning of Stolen Dreams, the Endurance is launched. Well, Stolen Dreams is the war story. They don't know who won. So the crew of the Endurance is made up of people from these various factions that were put together as a compromise with some last-minute changes. And when news arrives of who won that war, not everybody is happy. Skip gets to deal with that. On the Pang Yu, the chief engineer is none other than Brenna Dotseth, We were introduced to her in the very first book as the ensign just getting qualified for her first watch station. This is 10 years later. She's now the chief engineer back on the Pangu after she left. And we get to see her. And coincidentally, I don't know, if anybody follows the first series, but there's another character named Robert Casada, and they kind of butted heads, and then some things happened later. And this is the conclusion of their story, which is two people who, that's my romance. Speaking of romance, one of the characters that arrives on the ship, on the Pangu, is Ted Becker and his wife, Mrs. Becker. They go through the settling in and lots of doubts, and Ted is an old Marine, and he's not sure of this whole parenthood thing, and his wife, she wants to put down roots and have kids now. And then there's Maxim. Maxim had a girlfriend, a lover, somebody who he had been with for decades, since they were children. And she went down to the planet's surface in the last attempt at contact. And just not to put too fine a point on it, but there's his girlfriend right there. Just saying, it didn't go well. So he is going through extreme grief, anger. He would just want to rip these things to pieces. He doesn't view them as sentient beings at all. He would rather, and then when the shuttle she was on is automatically piloted back, guess what's on board? Fundek, another one of the aliens, accidentally got caught inside the shuttle and now finds himself in this ship of humans. And so there's this story between Fundek and Maxim that was really brutal and interesting and fun to that was a fun one. And then the last character is the oddball. Radinka Stormbringer is an avatar in a virtual world, and you don't know who's running the avatar. And her deal is she was a last-minute replacement by the bad guys from the first novel, and she, they're planning things to disrupt the current new status quo because they don't like how that ended. So they're a cause of some problems. And that also let me put the Tipsy Raven, a fantasy tavern, in my science fiction story. So that's it.
So, Alyssa, since this is a scattering of stories and poetry, and do you want to hit on a couple of the high points, or low points as the case may be, or hot and sunny and dry one side?
Kind of like Dennis just mentioned, there being a place to have a good drink. That's actually the first story in the book. It is a couple of people talking in a tavern during a torrential downpour, and one of them has a map to a very elusive city, the city of Chabrelai, which is the place that one of the few places that not only takes on the Ashurians, but they actually beat them back. But part of the ways they're actually successful in that is they keep moving the city because it's a floating city. So if they keep it in one place, they're going to get attacked. If they move it around, well, it's basically a giant headquarters. People would like to get there because it's supposed to be pleasant and wonderful and a paradise, not as much of a paradise, have eternal sunlight, which is really weird, aka the titular Nightlands. And some people don't even think that exists. But yeah, you have these two guys. They're not fighting, but they're discussing a map. I also have a couple of people who are just roaming the wilderness trying to. Well, one of them's trying to stay alive, and the other one's already dead. Um, that one is it's a young woman who's a pyromancer. Um, she gained her powers when her city was besieged by the Ashurians, and she's had a chip on her shoulder ever since because she's like the last scion of her people. Her protector and defender ever since she was small is a knight, again from Shabralai, who if he gets killed, he just lays there, and if you cover him up and don't let the sun hit him for a little bit, he'll eventually get back up and be like, "Oh, okay, well, time to go back to battle." Probably the most prolific figure throughout the entire thing, though, if only through whispers, if not a direct story. Hint, direct stories happen a couple of times with this character, is the Imperia Sorcha Kagatsu. She is the top person in Ashuria, commanding all of the horrible things they do. And if you weren't convinced that this would be an R-rated thing before her story pops up, the first page of that will solve that dilemma right away. It's a sex scene, it's a murder scene, it's a mutilation scene, it's a religious sacrifice scene, it is a implied cannibalism scene. It's like, wow, this lady is awful. Like, yeah, and now we have another 25 pages of her just doing her thing, which includes fighting dragons and casting death magic and all sorts of other crazy insanity. She also has various trainees who are, for lack of a better term, they're her beautiful missionaries that go out to these other cities that she gets sway over but hasn't fully conquered, so that she can convert them and get them to just rise up against anybody in her way. So it's a book full of very happy people, but trust me, there is actual happiness and there is actual dragon dogfighting mid-air combat. So come for the horrible, terrible things. Stay for the hope for humanity going forward.
One of the things that's always fun, right? And from being the notion of a storyteller is always how we discover the voices and the people we're going on the trip with. And I think this is one of those things is that, as writers, we frequently talk about the voices in our heads that we're just transcribing for because, sanity is kind of questionable on a good day. But at some point, we still have to be able to take the sights, the sounds, the voices in our heads and translate that in such a way that readers get a hint of those voices in our heads, right? They get to know them not the same way we do, which is probably good for us and better off for the readers too. But so, Jenny, I'm going to ask you this question. For you, especially when you're dealing with big alien worlds, humans, let's cross a couple of multiverses, everything else. How do you go about that experience of being the transcriber for the character's experience? How do you discover who they really are?
They tell me, and I write it down, and when it's wrong, I fix it. Honestly, what you're asking is to describe how we do craft, because that, to me, is what changes gobbledygook into good material. It's craft. Writing is both art and science, and the scientific part is craftsmanship. You have to actually work to make sure that what you're writing is what somebody can see. Way back when, way back in the Wayback Machine, I had a beta reader. I was writing in, an epic fantasy. And she said, one of the most important things to me anyone's ever said, because I know, I can tell, you can see everything clearly. You know what everybody looks like, you know what this world looks like. She goes, but you're not telling me, and so I have no idea. So that was really important. So quite for a while, I went to the other side of over-describing because description, I am an action and dialogue girl first, and description if I must. And you must. But it was very difficult for me. And I talked to an agent, again, in the way back machine, and he said, narrative is hard and description is difficult for you, isn't it? I'm like, yeah, because I can tell you're over-describing. You're trying too hard. You need to back it down. So that was the second most important thing. But all of that is craft. What do you describe that the readers need to have described, and what can you let them fill in? For the most part, everybody gets to fill in how everybody looks. I don't over describe that. I give some basics on some of the characters, but you only know what Kitty looks like because she's described by other people. I don't like the technique of, I looked in the mirror and my frizzy hair was all frizzy. I hate that. Okay. It's just like, nobody does that in real life. You might look in the mirror and go, I looked in the mirror today. You can't really tell because of the back. And I went, damn, my hair looks great today. I did not sit there and describe my hair to myself. Right. So that's crap. And they're a big, the writer I'm thinking of that does this in every freaking book is huge. And, more power to you, girl. But I thought it was terrible from book one, let alone your millions of books later. Anyway, so some of that is just practice. I have cut more words than most people will ever write in their lifetime. And I'm not exaggerating. I've cut millions of words. Millions. I had cut millions before I ever started the story that would turn into Touched by an Arrow. So a lot of that is just, it helps if you've read a lot because you know what you do and don't like. Like, I know I hate the look in the mirror and describe yourself, so I refuse to do it. It helps if you're really well read and you've read a lot, but you just got to work at it. There is no big decision. I describe enough, like if Kitty's car is a Lexus IS 300. I don't need to describe anything more. If you desperately need to know what it looks like, there's a Lexus website near you, right? But when I'm describing alien worlds, like in book, the next ones you'll see, book 11 is that's an external thing. We're going to the Alpha Centauri system. I have to describe a whole new world, plus what's going on in the solar space. So, but that's very different. The readers need more, but a lot of that I do via dialogue, not just here's 6 pages of narrative description. In fact, in one of the books I'm writing with, one of the mysteries I'm writing with my co-writer, Bibi, she's like, we need all this information, but it's too much in one spot. And I'm like, ooh, you're right. That's like 1.25 pages of narrative. She's like, yeah, it reads great, but I stopped reading because there was too much of it. So I've got to fix that up. So it's really all crap. And we don't have time in this for us to teach your craft, but that's, for me, that's where it comes in. That's the work portion. That's the why aren't you done portion. Well, I have to go back and fix that up with craft. And craft is not as easy as, So that's my answer, such as it is.
So dinner? What? Dinner. Dennis.
Run, Dennis, run!
We started talking about cannibalism and I got hungry. I don't know.
No, we didn't. Only Alyssa
Is
did.
it cannibalism if they're different species?
Yeah,
Even though
only one person
No,
started
it's
talking
not.
about that.
So dinner, Myers. So,
Yeah.
how do you bring them? How do you bring
Dennis,
the?
run! I'll trip him. Run!
I have 3 alien creatures as viewpoint characters, so I had to put myself into their skin and really understand. I mean, when they're interacting with each other on their home world in their own element, that's easy. That, that's they're normal there. But Fundak is amongst a bunch of humans, and some of the simplest things that we take for granted are just completely mixed up or alien, and it goes with us too. The first thing I play with is Fundek sees this small, petite alien and assumes that's the male because the big ones, obviously, they're much larger. That's the females, right? Because that's the way it is in his species. And by the way, the humans are doing their own thing too. The big ones must be the males. Fun with that. But then you've seen the creatures, they're like, kind of like Velociraptor, nice big teeth, right? So when they get to the point where they're starting to build trust, him and then Anna, Anna introduces himself, right? Fundek. And suddenly Anna is showing teeth. Now, for Fundek, showing teeth is threatening, but are those are very small teeth. So what does Fundek do? He's trying to communicate. So he copies the teeth thing. Cue the security guards running in, panicking. So that's the kind of thing I had fun with. Just kind of like a fish out of water. And then, of course, the first time he meets Maxim, that is, completely different from what he's been experiencing with these kind of friendly aliens. And then there's the one who just hates his guts. Yeah. And then another character that I really enjoyed was Daxi. Now imagine, if you will, Daxi and Bong Geeks, and Fundek for that matter. He's kind of a brother-in-law. But they grew up in this jungle village where it's fishing and hunting, and they build their homes into these massive trees. It's a very sort of primitive life. And Daxi is tasked with carrying this evidence of these otherworldly creatures all the way to the big city, to take them to the scholars to show them what they've found, because everybody agrees the scholars need to know about this. So here's Daxi on his own fish out of water journey, going across half a continent, small continent, but a long journey. New things like the nuclear-powered steam train, which we won't talk about right now, until he finally gets to the city and has to make his way in the city because he's stopped from finishing his journey because of the priests. The priests won't have any of it, and they won't let him up to see the scholars. So him doing that, and along the way he meets the black and red guy, which his name is Emthek, which the literal translation of Emthek is crash. Yeah, so they were probably the most fun. Radinka, this over the top avatar, she's a pirate queen, and she walks in and just takes over and announces that she's in charge. Not everyone's happy with that, but they're bored because nothing's happened yet. She was a lot of fun. I've got some really amazing characters. And then Maxim, the grief and the pain that he feels. Long story short, I lost a lot of people during COVID, and I've had people close to me pass away before, so I've felt the grief and the anger, and I put all of that into his character. And it was not a pleasant journey, but it was cathartic, and I really like how that whole thing comes together in the end.
Alyssa, how do you bring your voices in your head to life?
Well, one, I'm glad they're not voices actually in my head, because I was asked after the aforementioned cannibalism story, because it was originally published in an anthology that has since gone out of print. And the publisher of that anthology looks at me after reading it and like, were you abused as a child or something? I'm like, no, that's just kind of where the story took me. I figured if it's going to be mean and severe, it'll be mean and severe. Part of it is curiosity. Um, I mentioned the story with the tavern. Um, you know, and that one has a performer in the tavern who is playing an instrument, but it's not earth. So I didn't feel like it should be an earth instrument. So I invented in my head this one man band contraption that I call the stomp flute. And I only said like a few things just to fill in the details. It's just like that just seemed like an interesting and novel thing to me. One of the pieces of poetry in the book is actually it's a chant that workers would exchange back and forth, and there's a note underneath that actually explains how they would perform it. There's another bit in there that one of the poems is actually intended as a song, so that one could perform it if one had the music, that sort of thing. In my mind, okay, I grew up in a very isolated place. Like, it used to be gravel, it degraded to dirt. And even though I lived in a small community, when it came summertime, I was isolated from the world. So I had to find ways to figure out the world early on. And this is just a continuation of that. So sometimes I will go in my, general operating procedure is, hey, I want to be imaginative with things. I want to fantasize things. Why am I trying to do this exactly the way that everybody's done it before? So it's why I, for lack of a better term, highly Panzer Dragoon or does dragons. The shapes of their heads are not like Japanese dragons. They're not like European dragons. They're not like dinosaurs. It's just like, this thing looks all sorts of weird. It's not that it has thick scales. It has bone armor that has grown out. The fibers of the wing, when they land, they sometimes just flake away. And now these people are making clothing out of it. And the nice thing is it's fire, resistant clothing too. So, it's little things like that. What would you do with the actual rules of physics sometimes combined with, I want to just throw out the book on what people expect. And that's how my brain starts smashing things together, and it's also how I smash characters together. So, I literally have a character named Vanity who, big surprise, she's vain because she's kind of been programmed that way through magic. She used to be hideous, and then somebody made her gorgeous and said, okay, go be my little missionary now. Yeah, I will. Part of it is just curiosity gone mad.
Layla, how about for you?
Well, this is where I have always loved collaborating, but this is where a true sisterhood was formed. A year ago in October, TL Travis and I were sitting around her table having dinner, talking about we need to do our next Rocktoberfest together. We were in the middle of finishing Rocktoberfest year 4. So we're sitting there and we're like, that would be so much fun. We're already talking about doing the dragons. Fast forward a couple months, more than Echoes of a Muted Song came out. And she's beta reading Echoes of a Muted Song for me. And the character Claude that I had created to be a complete throwaway, like, the guy is written to be an absolute dick. I had never, ever, ever intended for him to ever appear in a book again. And she goes, Diamond and Shadow would have so much fun mentoring and straightening him out. Now, Diamond and Shadow are two of her characters. She's like, we need him in our Rocktoberfest band. Well, shit. We now have one of the 4 members for Rocktoberfest. All right, you know what? Let's do this, if only because I want to see how Diamond and Shadow and what you're going to do to straighten this asshole character that I've written out. We're going to run with this. Fast forward again. I'm writing a little Campfire Blues. And as I'm writing Axis's story, he's talking about his ex-bandmate who had a motorcycle wreck and you know, was kicked out of the band basically because he needed physical therapy and everything to heal. And as I'm writing this, I'm going, that's our freaking guitarist. That is our guitarist. So I'm like sending her bits in the middle of the creation going, I think I have our guitarist and da-da-da. And then I started writing notes down for him. And I am a big collect the underpants. Do not like it for creation. So the lights are usually out. There's a little lamp music, incense, a whole lot of vaping going on, some drinks happening. And I've got a notebook. And I sat that night and just started writing notes about Bowie. What had been going on with Bowie since the accident? How many, you know, he obviously ended up scarred. This is what happened. That's what happened. I put his whole backstory together that night. So we had Bowie pretty much figured out, you know, months ago before we ever sat down to write. Tony was another throwaway character. Tony was meant to be Tony was a means to an end. Tony was the best friend to Bowie, trying to get him to this audition. Tony wasn't the greatest guitar player, but he auditioned and he went out in the first round and Bowie went forward and he stayed with him to make sure that he didn't leave because he was very reluctant about auditioning. The scars on his face have become a huge thing and he's got a big chip on his shoulder about them. And like I said earlier, we were sitting there going, we don't have a singer. We have no clue. We're on page. We're putting this band together. We're building this story on the fly. Like she's in one room, I'm in the other. We're doing the chapter back and forth thing. And she gets to the last line or last paragraph that I'd written in what was supposed to be Tony's last chapter. And then Tony's supposed to go home. And she goes, do you want to know what I'm thinking? And I'm like, yeah, because we've got a problem. We're doing the auditions tomorrow for the singer, and we haven't come up with anything. I'm like, the only thing I could think of is Tony. And she's like, that's exactly what I'm thinking. So right there in the thick of things, we're just like, all right, run with it. I can't tell you how many conversations, really short conversations, because it seems like we're on the same wavelength, have been, hey, I had this thought, I had this idea, what do you think of this? Run with it. And we just run with it. We don't talk a lot about the chapter when we're writing it. It is like playing Frisbee in the dark. You get what you get back, and then you play off of it. But we had that little mini conversation about Tony, and then I'm like, wait a minute. We're supposed to be writing 2 and 2, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to give you Tony. So Tony is actually her character now. We've written him a bit back and forth throughout the whole book. He's pretty much the only person we have written heavily the same character. But Tony became like the throwaway that lived. And he's now the lead singer of this band, and he's going to get his book next and all of that. And we're going to have fun with Tony because he needed to stay. And Tibby, she just pulled together on the fly and was laughing in the room as she was doing it because we had no bass player either. We literally went into this going, whatever comes out on the page, holy crap, pass another vodka cranberry, oh shit. I mean, there was a lot of Guinness beer and vodka cranberries that went into the creation of the story. And we wrote it probably grand total in under a month. The last chapter was written today. We threw it back and forth. On some days we threw it. I would send her a chapter. She'd have it back to me next day. Or she'd send me a chapter. I'd have it back to her the next day. we were so flowing and feeding off of each other that, 2,500 word to 3,000 word chapters, and they're flying back and forth through cyberspace in like 2-3 hours. That's how well we got into the story to do it. And I think one of the only reasons that we stopped where we did today was because we knew we didn't want to give the readers too much after Rocktoberfest, because there's a book 2, 3, and 4 coming, and we needed to switch point of views to those characters who were getting their romances. Otherwise, I think we, like with our dragons, where it would be like 78, 80,000 words, and we're going, we probably have to end this and switch to the next set of brothers, because we could keep going. And that's kind of how it's been with each of the books we've co-written. The characters are conversations that we have or little things that we see pop up, and then we just run with it like blind squirrels and have a absolute blast.
Well, we've got plenty to stack up for our fall to be read pile. But before we get out of here, let's make sure everybody knows where to find you guys. Websites, social media, and of course, what the book is. So, Alyssa, you're up first.
My website is len-berry.com, len-berry.com. I need to update with the new book put on there. I haven't done that part yet because I am my own web mistress. But I also have Linktree, linktr.ee/lenberry, because most of my work is under that name. Slowly fixing that, but, step by step. You can find me on Blue Sky a lot. I hang out on Instagram. I'm out there on the interwebs. You can track me down. I will probably have a wonderful conversation about my red pandas or they're plush dolls, of course, or weird biology or what have you. Come track me down and have fun.
Layla?
You can find me at Layla Dorine, author at Wix.com, Rainbow Lyrics and Mellow Mushrooms, which is my blog. All over Facebook. Not as much right now because I have a lot of stuff to finish before mid-December. If you were interested at all in More Than Scars, you can find it in about 13 days when it goes live. It is part of the Road to Rocktoberfest series. There are 4 previous years of Rocktoberfest collections that give you about a dozen books per Rocktoberfest. And if you're curious about the books that led into it, which are Echoes of a Muted Song and A Little Campfire Blues, they are available in KU. They are available in paperback, ebook, and A Little Campfire Blues is already available in audio. And Echoes will be joining it very soon. It's about midway through.
Nice.
Jenny?
You can find all of the first 10 books of the Alien series wherever fine books are sold. You can find me at GiniKoch.com. If you want to join my free newsletter, hook me up. You can do so from the bottom of most of the pages of that website. I'm all over Facebook, and I really mean all over. I'm still on Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky, and I'm on Pinterest. Yes, it looks like I'm on Instagram. Again, Ginger Blue hired a young, and that person is doing anything on Instagram. If it looks like I am, it's because the young took pity. The next release is coming out. Book 11, Alien Separation, should be dropping soon. And after that, it'll be books 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. New books in December, the Alien Collection, which is the collected short stories set in the Alien series, will release. That is brand spanking new. And drumroll, please, in April, Aliens Like Us will release, and then next December, Aliens Like Them will release, and then we keep rolling. Then I'm on a 1 book a year contract. Thank God. That I have some other stuff coming out, but at this point, it's more like, when are we finished, and when can Ginger Blue get it going? So we kind of the Alien series actually really coming back to me and then going to Ginger Blue did kind of cause a lot of things to drop and stumble. So, hey, but these books still available out there, looking good.
Dennis?
I am Dennis M. Myers. You can find me at automatedempire.com. There are links to all the books. My first series is available on Amazon. You can also order them through my Indiegogo campaign. There's a link to that also on my webpage. I am still raising funds for yet another book. I've got the cover ordered and that's coming, but I still need funds for editing. So if you go to the site right now, you can order a copy of Secret of the Ombax signed from me as a special part of this promotion.
And you can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentialsworkshops.com, creatingpros.com, and of course here at ConTinual. And we will see you again next time. Go stack up those to be read piles. We'll see you again soon.